Welcome to episode 71 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Jeremy Palmer, Clark Palmer here with you. Got a lot of stuff to talk about. I was saying yesterday, Clark, that some of my favorite shows are the ones we just do topics and we get to just kind of pontificate about whatever. We don't have to talk about games and, so it's kind of fun. And we're going to get to do a lot more of this now that, there's no football games this week and we have the Super Bowl and then, nothing in terms of championship or playoffs coming anytime soon. So this should be a really fun show. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you think, tell us why we're wrong. A whole bunch of topics today, but, luckily we waited until Sunday because the news has broken that Kyrie Irving has been traded to Dallas. And, a very interesting move. He made a trade demand the other day, and it looked like I have a feeling Brooklyn was prepared for this because they kind of just, all right, it feels to me like they just held up a for sale sign, or I was going to say earlier, I was going to compare it to a garage sale. Like, you ever been to a garage sale? Like, you go and it's just a bunch of stuff that used to be good, Kyrie Irving was really good in 2016. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it used to be really good. Like, you find an old record player, it used to be really awesome in 1985, but hey, it's worth $2. Hey, I'll give it a shot. Why not? So that's kind of what, that's what this trade feels like to me. So just go over it real quick. So they traded, Kyrie Irving for Dorian Finney-Smith, Markieff Morris, a first-round pick in 2027, and 2 second-round picks in 27 and 29. So the draft picks are way out in the future.
Wait a minute. It was Dinwiddie. Wait. From the Mavericks, Spencer Dinwiddie.
Dorian Finney-Smith.
Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, the 2 second-round picks, and then the 2029 first-round pick. And then the Nets sent Kyrie and Markieff Morris to Dallas.
Right. I apologize. I can't keep track of the Morris brothers. It's like, where's Waldo?
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I guess it'll be interesting to see. I guess you get into how they play, and it's like, well, they lost. If you listen to Hoops Tonight, Jason Timpf was talking about Dorian Finney-Smith is a really good defender, and so you lose that. And Kyrie Irving is obviously somewhat of a turnstile on defense, so that obviously kind of creates some problems. So that'll be interesting to see what. I do think it's kind of funny. Like, I do look at like Brooklyn now, and I'm like, defensively they're probably not half. They may not be half bad. If Durant's in there and he's playing well, so.
Yeah, I think I feel like we need to do a little perspective on Kyrie Irving, okay? Like, I think people are getting confused. Like, in everyone's mind, because Kyrie Irving hit that shot in the finals in 2016, it's like that's who Kyrie Irving is crystallized in people's minds, and they seem to think that that's who they're getting. And Kyrie Irving hasn't been that guy, since 2016. Like, he's not that guy anymore offensively. If you watched him in the playoffs last year, he wasn't great. Didn't shoot a really great percentage, took a bunch of shots, and I don't think he's not I know he made the All-Star team, but he's not really an All-Star caliber player anymore. So right. I think that we need to examine, like, we talk about basketball wise. Oh, well, yeah, he's a really good player. He can score, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but he's not anywhere near to what he was, and it's like, all right, he's just going to be our designated hitter. He's just going to score, and he's going to get the ball sometimes so Luka doesn't have to have the ball all the time. That's fine, but I don't understand the idea that Kyrie Irving is a superstar it's insane. He's been a problem for the last 4 years at least. He blew up the thing in Boston. He's been a pain in the ass ever since Brooklyn signed him. So, I think basketball-wise, this could be pretty good in the playoffs. They could be pretty good, but are they going to win the championship? No. I think that if I'm Dallas, like, I think it's fine that they gave up what they gave up. Like, it's really not that much. Spencer Dinwiddie was going to be gone anyway. Dorian Finney-Smith is a nice role player, but it's amazing when you think about that. That's what they got for Kyrie Irving. Like, we were talking about this yesterday. Like, I didn't think they would trade him because I just didn't think they were going to get anything that was worth it for him. And they were like, you know what? We can get rid of him, and we're just going to cut our losses and just take this 25 cents on the dollar deal, and it just. Yeah, so it just blows my mind. So I mean, go ahead. What are your thoughts on the trade initially?
Yeah, I think that's all really good. That's all really good. I mean, especially because I think for today, especially tomorrow, there'll be some takes today. But tomorrow, when you have all the radio and the TV shows talking about it, I think they're going to be like, oh well, Dallas now has 2 stars on their team. And like you were saying, I mean, Kyrie's not. I mean, he's 30 now.
Yeah, 30 or 31.
Okay, and he's got an extensive injury history. I mean, him getting hurt is not like a thing where you go, "Oh, I'm surprised he got hurt." If he gets hurt, it's kind of like, "Well, yeah, that's what he does. He's small and he's been hurt a lot." So I guess he's still, people still consider him an elite offensive player, and I think that's fair to say. But like you were saying, maybe he's not at the level he was, back then. And then you just, like I was saying before, I think defensively because Luka's not a great defender. I don't think he's ever really going to be a great defender. So you're going to put him out there with Kyrie, who's not big and he's not a very good defender. So you're really going to have to construct the roster the right way, and you're going to have to hope Kyrie doesn't get hurt. And then you're going to have to hope that he doesn't, decide to not play, or he demands a trade or something. I mean, even like he was doing crazy stuff when he was under contract with the Nets. Okay, so you're going to give him an extension and then he's not going to be nuts? Like, good luck with that. So, we'll see. I find it's interesting. I like when moves like this get made because it's always interesting. It's something to talk about. And it's kind of like, oh, could this make Dallas better? But I don't. To me, it's one of those things that's like, all right, well, we'll see, because Dallas is like 29 and 26 or something.
Right.
Like that's what I just find so funny about this. Some of these teams that we keep talking about, like the Lakers aren't even in the playoffs right now. They're like 12th in the West. And I'm just like, it's like, oh, they're going to make this move, and then they're going to be a contender now. Like, okay,
yeah, look, I'm a Luka fan, so therefore I'm a Dallas fan. Like, I'm rooting for them to do well, but I don't understand this move. Long term, there's no way I see this working. Like, I don't see any way possible you're going to give this guy a long-term deal. Like, that's just a huge mistake. So you're giving up stuff to get a guy for 3 months, and you probably aren't going to win the championship anyway. Now listen, they were probably going to, like I said, they were going to lose Dinwiddie anyway.
They're going to sign him. Maybe that was I don't know. But that's one of those weird things where I don't, because Kyrie didn't have a no-trade clause or anything, did he? No. So I don't understand how people are going to jump to that conclusion that, they're going to give him an extension. And like you were saying, Spencer Dinwiddie was going to be gone anyway. So, and Dorian Finney-Smith is a role player. You can replace role players. So maybe it is a rental. I don't know.
Well, that is. I mean, it's funny.
They've still got a few days before the end of the trade deadline.
Right. I mean, it's funny. Like, for Brooklyn, I think it's like, all right, we're getting this out of here. We're cutting bait. Yeah. We're just going to take what we can get. But for Dallas, like, you gave up that, and you're probably and I mean, if they don't, first of all, it doesn't make any sense if they don't re-sign him. So you don't give up future draft picks if you're not going to re-sign the guy. So it's just like, man, this is what you're going to do. Like Chris Mannix was suggesting this, like, no, Luka hasn't asked like, I don't want to be here anymore. But like, is it going to come to the point like this is your solution? Like I just feel like this is a Band-Aid on a broken leg. There's no way long-term this works out. And if you're Dallas, like, you're trying to convince Luka to stay and your move is to trade for Kyrie Irving?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I like I said, I don't see this working out long-term. They don't have a good enough roster to win the title anyway. So, yeah, I think, but that being said, there's no great teams in the West right now. So who the hell knows? But yeah, I just, overall, I think
that Dallas would struggle against like Denver. I mean, I just don't see how that, that seems difficult, but, we'll see. Or Memphis,
Right. So from the perspective of the Lakers, I want to talk about something that I just completely disagree with. I understand the Lakers won the title in the bubble. I get it. I know they won it in 2020. Nobody disputes that, okay? But this idea that I keep hearing it presented in more than one place, like, well, if they get into the playoffs and you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, look out, and it's like, look out for what? Like, this team isn't good enough to win a playoff series. Get out of here.
Can I repeat this? They're not in the playoffs right now. They have a losing record right now. So,
watch.
Go ahead.
Watch the Lakers play. Read the list of the guys on their roster. Nobody knows who half of them are.
Yeah.
This is there's no way. First of all, I don't believe Anthony Davis is going to stay healthy anyway, but even if they're healthy in the playoffs, and the idea that if they trade for Kyrie Irving, they're a championship contender. Like,
they don't have enough shooting or defense on the wings to deal with the best teams in the West. So that's ridiculous to me.
I think people are getting, this is again where we have to draw the line between NBA regular season and NBA playoffs.
Yeah.
People are watching LeBron score 40 in the regular season. They're going, man, look out for the Lakers.
LeBron scored a bunch last year and they missed the playoffs. And by the way, they're not in the playoffs right now. Right. They have a losing record right now, and LeBron is scoring like crazy. So
Yeah, they can't even get into the top 10 in the West. So I just think, listen, now basketball-wise, I do think Kyrie could play pretty well for the Lakers. I think anybody signing him long-term is a disaster, but for a short-term rental, I think it could be fine. But this idea that the Lakers are one move away, the Lakers are one move away from being several moves away, okay? Like, it's just, come on with that. Like, get out of here. So, yeah, I'm not a Kyrie Irving guy. I think the guy has no chance of working out long term. He's going to blow up your team at some point. And I think this is kind of a desperate move for Dallas. And I got to be honest, I don't understand why Dallas is so desperate. Like, they don't need to win the championship this year. Like, Luka's 23? Like, they don't need to go for broke now. So it just confuses me. The Lakers, I get being desperate. Like, I understand if you're desperate if you're them, and if Brooklyn, I get them being desperate, but I don't understand the desperation from Dallas. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm just confused. I'm just a little bit confused by it.
Yeah. The Lakers, one thing I will say this though, I think it's fair to sort of criticize the Lakers because you know what? Look, LeBron's not getting any younger. And your roster's been kind of a mess. You made that stupid Russell Westbrook move. I mean, you're looking at future first-round picks. You're still the Lakers. Just trade that stuff and get Kyrie Irving and try to, I'm not saying it's going to work, but why not go for it? If it blows up in your face and you're bad, you're still the Lakers. The Lakers are always, it feels like the Lakers are always one move away from just getting a star, and then it's like, oh, okay, they're cool, they're relevant again. So I don't understand why they didn't just pull the trigger. Because we've been talking about this for 6 months. I don't know why they didn't just do it. But whatever. I mean, again, I don't think they would win with it, but I mean, why don't you just do it? Why not? What's the problem?
I think the move, honestly, I think they should have tried to get that deal from Indiana and get Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. I think if they got Hachimura, you get Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Okay, now you have a real roster.
Right.
Like a real NBA team that can actually do stuff in the playoffs. Now you actually have a team. Getting Kyrie, I think even if they dump Westbrook, getting Kyrie Irving, okay, great. You got another guy who needs the ball. It's just he's just going to be a scorer. He's just going to score some points, but so I think at this point of his career, Kyrie's basically a gunner. He's basically just going to come out and jack it up. And if he's hot that night, you're going to do pretty well. And people are fooled by these 40 and 50-point games that they think this is real stuff that's going to happen in the playoffs. It has no chance of happening in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think and this is more of a long range take. I think we're at the point now, and I think people, maybe some GMs and some other media people haven't caught up to this. The idea that you're going to sort of microwave a championship, you're just going to throw some shit together and it's going to work right away. I don't think that works anymore. Like the Milwaukee Bucks, they didn't really do that. They spent a while building. They have a system, and whatever. The Warriors, obviously, Denver, Memphis has been built. Like, I think that's more kind of the way to go, because there's so much skill on the floor now. If you don't have enough shooting and defense, forget it when you get into the playoffs, because you're just going to get exposed. But someone's going to find your weaknesses. They're going to expose them, and you're done. So I think it's these things are fun to talk about. Like, oh, you put these guys together, but the idea that it's just going to work instantaneously is ridiculous. I don't think it works anymore like that. But
yeah, I agree with you. I don't think getting 2 stars is like, oh, we're going to be championship contenders now. There's too much talent in the league.
Yeah, and the way teams play, go back 5 out, especially in the playoffs. You're 5 out on offense and defense. You have to be that. Otherwise, you're going to get exposed.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the league is just way beyond that now. You can't do the super team thing. You can't do it anymore. Like the Miami was able to get away with it because LeBron is maybe the best player of all time. That's really the only reason, because their roster, you put the Heat roster out, even the championship teams, against some of these other teams, forget it. They have no chance. So yeah, you've got to have a much deeper team than you used to have. And it's not even just 2 or 3 stars. You got to really have the right mix of 2 or 3 guys for it to work.
Yeah, you got to be kind of versatile too. If you're not, like I said, if you're not versatile, the better teams are going to find some way to beat you. So it's just
Yeah. So let's go through a couple other NBA topics while we're on it, and then we'll pivot to football. So we had 2 NBA fights in the past week or week and a half, and it's kind of funny. The NBA, there have been more 40-point games. Well, January was the second most 40-point games by individual players in the history of the NBA. The month that's first was December.
Wow.
So the last 2 months were the most 40 and 50-point games in the history of the league. So it's like nobody's playing defense right now, obviously. I think it's a bit of an issue. The NBA needs to try to figure something out, because, man, these regular season games, and some of them are exciting, so I'll give them credit for that. But it's basically one team makes a bunch of threes and the other team doesn't. So I just find it interesting. Like in the midst of that, though, we've had a couple of teams who, I think, talking about Memphis, I think Memphis is now getting a reputation, especially Dillon Brooks, where first of all, they were talking a bunch of junk last year and they lost to Golden State. They've been talking a lot of mess this year about how great they are. Dillon Brooks gets into an altercation with Shannon Sharp, who's at the game, watching the game. He's getting into it with him, and then he takes a cheap shot. Like, I don't know if you saw this, but basically they came down for a rebound, and Donovan Mitchell got the ball, and Dillon Brooks was laying on the ground and kind of threw his fist back and nailed Donovan Mitchell right in the crotch.
Right.
And a melee ensued. There was pushing, shoving, benches clearing, all of that kind of stuff. And then the other day, Austin Rivers, who I didn't know Austin Rivers was still in the league. Apparently he plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And he's running down the court, hits a 3, runs down to the other end. They're playing Orlando, and says something, and Mo Bamba gets off the bench, and they start swinging, punches thrown. It was a real brouhaha. And so they're trying to grab each other off of him. It's a complete mess, whatever. And, so I just find it interesting that these guys are scoring all these points and nobody's playing defense, but yet the teams are willing to fight. There's still guys out there that are trying to take shots at each other. And I think that, Dillon Brooks especially is getting a reputation. I think he's basically the Memphis version of Draymond Green. I think that's kind of what we're finding out. He's, a little too physical when he doesn't need to be. And, for the most part, I don't believe in NBA players being really tough necessarily. That,
right.
They don't really want to fight each other. They're not. So it's kind of it's kind of interesting. I think that it's going to be really fascinating in the playoffs. What happens with Memphis, because they seem to think that they're all that, and we'll see how it goes. I do think they're a very good team, but I do have some question marks about them. But that being said, NBA is going to heat up, man. I don't know why they did this. Maybe it's good, maybe it isn't. But the trade deadline is on Thursday, right before the Super Bowl. So the NBA trying to steal a couple of days from the NFL. And honestly, I think the NBA should put their All-Star game this weekend, the weekend before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Just to try to grab some attention.
Right. Yeah, they could. That could be interesting.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be talking more basketball coming like I said, with the trade deadline. But I would like to discuss LeBron James is probably going to break the scoring record this week.
He's like 36 points away after the Pelicans game last night. So you figure within the next. I mean, it could be the next game. If not the next game, you would figure one of the next two games. So. Right.
So that'll make LeBron James the all-time leader in scoring in NBA history. And I think it's one of these things. I don't think people are talking about it enough. I think this is a really unbelievable record, and amazing that the guy's played 20 years.
Yeah,
and he's still, not only is he still playing really well. So I think it's number one. I think we need to remember how great of a player that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was. I think that.
Right.
That to me, like, that's the number one thing with this record is we're reminded of how great Kareem was, and even in his 15, 16 years into the league, he was playing great games in the NBA Finals, and was really an incredible player. Obviously, might be the best player of all time. So I think that I think we should give LeBron more credit for this, and I think this should speak for itself as far as where LeBron's career is, and the people who want to hold on to the Jordan's better than LeBron, regardless of what your opinion is, you can't disagree with the totality of LeBron's career and all of this stuff he's gone as long as he's been here, been playing in the NBA anyway. What a career! I don't think we can dispute how great LeBron's career is. But go ahead, what are your thoughts?
Yeah,
on the record?
right. And he's going to be. I was watching at halftime of the Lakers-Pelicans game, J.J. Redick was talking about it, and then Jalen Rose pointed out that, he's also top 5 in assists. So the fact that, because it is kind of weird, like LeBron, like for years and years and years, we talked about how he's a great distributor, right? And he scores a lot, but we were like, oh, great distributor. So he's going to be, for a lot of people, he's going to be considered the greatest scorer in NBA history, yet he's also one of the greatest, assist makers in NBA history, which is nuts. Because I don't know where. We'd have to look up the list, but Magic Johnson was a good scorer, but he's not at this level. Granted, he didn't play long enough, but it's just like one of those things that's that's incredible. And again, this is the problem with the media culture that we live in. No one can acknowledge that. Unless they're also saying that they think he's the greatest player of all time, because then they're like, oh, well, I can't praise him. I have to take a position, which is, again, ridiculous, because it's like, who cares? Okay? Jordan did some things better than LeBron. LeBron does some things better than Jordan. LeBron does some things better than Kareem. Kareem did some things better than probably Jordan and LeBron. So, who can, yeah, LeBron is great. He's had a great career, regardless of whether you think he's the greatest player of all time or not, okay? And that's what's so annoying, that people can't, they literally have to go, well, no, Jordan's better, and I can't say anything nice about LeBron, which is just, dude, okay, all this attention, all this hype, he came into the league, he won the MVP 4 times, he won 4 titles, he's been to the finals 10 freaking times, and he's about to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. He's one of the greatest players we have ever seen, okay? That much is not in dispute, okay? So, Yeah, it's it is pretty incredible. I think it'll be kind of cool once he breaks it, and then people will be talking about it, and it'll just be it'll be kind of sad because there'll be some people who just praise it, and then there'll be other people who just find some way to tear it down. They'll just find some way to just try to take something out of it and take away our enjoyment of sports because everything has to be about well, this guy's good and this guy sucks. So whatever. It's just. It is a really tremendous accomplishment. And like I was saying the other day, it just speaks to how amazing of an accomplishment it is for Kareem because he didn't shoot threes. And he's going to have done this. He set the record in fewer games than it's going to take LeBron to break the record. I mean, he just did this with skyhooks for 20 years. I mean, that's incredible.
And I think a lot of it does come down to marketing and branding. Jordan basically was part of the group that revolutionized the NBA along with Magic and Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Nike became huge because of Michael Jordan, right? So it's got everybody. So everybody has so Jordan has this tremendous nostalgia advantage. Plus, we didn't cover sports the same way as we do now. So everything Jordan did wrong or perceived to have done wrong, that's the crazy part, is LeBron never really does anything wrong. So even the people who criticize him, he's still not really doing anything wrong. So Jordan gets to live on in this, where he never missed a shot and was the greatest player ever and all of this stuff. And he never lost. And it's like, well, except except all of the years that he lost. Right. Except every year before the finals, he comes back after he quits. Orlando beats him in the playoff. It's kind of ridiculous. I think we need to, and Kareem doesn't get as much respect because the media didn't cover players the same way. And Kareem was not really, one of the guys that the media loved. Kareem was kind of doing his own thing, but Kareem was revolutionary in the fact that he was the guy who really started to change his diet, so he could play longer. He was doing yoga. He was doing different things that athletes never did. LeBron's obviously got the best training and the best nutrition and all of that stuff. But, because LeBron came second, we have to crap all over him, which is, it's kind of frustrating to me. And I'm happy that LeBron has all this stuff that he can, that he can hold up there as his greatest ever. And I love Michael Jordan. Don't get me wrong. But to me, LeBron, the 2016 playoff run and the 2018 playoff run are unassailable.
Yeah.
Those are just, to me, that's just, I don't think Jordan's ever doing all of that. I don't think he's doing that in a playoff series at that age. By
the way, and people don't want to fucking admit this, and it's so annoying, but guys, the skill level that LeBron has had to compete against over the last 10 years, is far greater than what Jordan was competing against. Okay?
Yep.
He's playing the Knicks teams, and they got Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason and what, come on. It's just a very different thing. So that's kind of on the side of, LeBron's the greatest of all time. I just think that whole debate is just ridiculous, and it's red meat for the sports media. I don't really care either way. Jordan was unbelievable. LeBron's unbelievable. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was awesome. Magic was awesome. Larry Bird was awesome. Come on. We don't really need to. Dwayne Wade was awesome when he was in his prime. Do I need to do this where I need to sit here and pick one? Come on.
Well, yeah, and I hope it's one of these things. Whenever an NBA story like this happens, I hope all these young people go back and realize how good these guys were. I just don't. I don't think. I hope that happens because I just don't. I feel like we do this thing where we're talking about now, and obviously the younger generation is all going to say LeBron's better, and I get that. But I just feel like young people out there, go back and watch YouTube clips of these guys. Go back and watch how great they were because. And
you have to understand, Kareem played in an era when you had 7-foot centers on most of the teams. Okay, so and it was basically, we're going to throw the ball to you on the block, and you got to make stuff happen. And he did for 20 years. I mean, and he was just. I mean, that skyhook was unbelievable. I mean, it was just basically unstoppable. There's a few times where it got blocked, but for the most part, no. He would get it, he'd turn and throw it up, and it was going in. So
Yeah, it's a tremendous player, and not only he's probably the best college player ever, and he might be the best NBA player ever.
Right.
So I think we should talk about that a little bit more. I think Nick Wright is correct when he suggests that Kareem, if we're going to talk about greatest player ever, Kareem, Michael, and LeBron should all be in the discussion together.
Right.
As to who's the greatest.
Right.
All right, so we'll move on. Let's talk about some stuff going on in the NFL. So Tom Brady, after 23 years in football, has decided to hang it up. It's crazy. He's been the quarterback. He's been a quarterback in the NFL for more than half of my life. So it's pretty crazy. I got to watch his whole career. Pretty tuned into it. Got to see all of his accomplishments. As far as the retirement goes, I just get the sense after this season that I think Brady, I just think he's not motivated to do all the work that he's going to have to do to stay at the top of his game. I just think he just doesn't. I just think he's kind of tired of doing all of the nonsense. I think playing in the games and the physical stuff, I think he can do it just fine. I don't think that's an issue. Right. I just think, it's hard to get up every day and work as hard as he does to be that great. I think he's, decided he wants to do some other things. And look, man, like that this is another guy that, there's probably going to be some arguments, but, he can argue he's the greatest player ever. I don't think you can say he's not the most talented. You can talk about a bunch of different quarterbacks, but Tom Brady has an argument.
Yeah, I will say I like just calling him greatest quarterback of all time because I have a hard time saying player because quarterback is such a different position from the other positions on the field. Right. Like people used to say Jerry Rice is the greatest player of all time, which I don't know. Maybe I'm more comfortable with that just because quarterback is such a different. I feel like we should just say greatest quarterback of all time because it's such a different, thing. So as far as that goes, again, that's just a very difficult. To me, it's just a difficult thing to do because it's like, well, how do you rate that? Because people go, oh, well, he's got 7 rings and the other guys don't have anything close to that. It's like, right, but I watched all of his 7 rings. It's like, do you understand the confluence of events that like I've been thinking about this the past couple weeks. Like, look, if Patrick Mahomes can win 4, maybe 5 Super Bowls and win a few MVPs and have a sustained run of greatness over the next 10, 12 years where they just keep making the playoffs and making conference championship games, he's going to have an argument. Okay, and people are going to be like, oh, well, he doesn't have 7 rings. I'm sorry. Once you get to like 4, I don't really care. Like, it just gets kind of ridiculous. Like, oh, well, 1 more. Oh, well, like, come on. If you want me to get into specifics of, all those different Super Bowls that he won, they're playing the Seahawks. They're down by 10 points, and Cliff Averill on the defensive line for the Seahawks goes out, and all of a sudden Brady has time to throw, and he just starts, carving up their defense, and then Pete Carroll just stupidly decides not to run the ball with Marshawn Lynch, and the Patriots win the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan doesn't run the ball twice as the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons, and the Patriots win the Super Bowl. So, it's just there's so many, and I'm not going to take any credit away from him. He was great. He won those games, but it's just one of those things that's kind of like if you want to say you think Joe Montana is, it's like, okay, I can see an argument for that. I would probably take Brady over him, but, I guess I can sort of see that, it's just, again, it's one of those things where, I feel like a lot of times people, they spend too much time on this. Tom Brady's just great. If you want to call him the greatest of all time, I've said that a bunch of times. I'm fine with it. Let's just go with that, But like I said, I think Mahomes could end up having an argument at some point down the road, because I don't think you can just purely go based on the, count the rings and go, well, that's it,
Yeah, I think Tom Brady should be remembered. He was probably the most consistent quarterback I've ever seen. Most consistent from game to game. Didn't do a lot of wow stuff, but was just, like a metronome. Just every game, you pretty much got the same thing from him, regardless of what time in the game it was. and you always felt if he got the ball at the end, he was going to come through, even though famously a few times he didn't.
Right.
So I think that, as far as the Super Bowls go, I think he got the right number. I think that the two to the Giants, I think they probably should have won. And the Atlanta and Seattle ones, I think they probably should have lost. And that Philadelphia one, they were right there. They never punted in the game. But, the team just beat them that day.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. I was thinking about that. I'm like, if they had just sacked Eli Manning or Asante Samuel had caught that interception, he would have a perfect season. And then I think that would even, like, some of the other people would be like, all right, well, he's got to be the greatest. He has the perfect season. I can't, I think that would just kind of eliminate anything right there. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, you can play it both ways, but it's just like, yeah, so many things have to go into that. Patrick Mahomes might already have 2 Super Bowls if Chris Jones wasn't offsides against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. Like, it's just, there's so that's why I think it gets ridiculous when they go, well, I'm just going to count the rings. No, I need to do more than that. But
yeah, well, I have one more thing about Tom Brady, but before we talk about that, I want to put to rest this idea that, I see a lot of this, people making jokes about, well, he went through all this to ruin his marriage. Like, oh man, the team was 8-9 and, he's divorced now. And, was it really worth it? Okay. I've been married. It's going to be 19 years this year. Okay. I'm going to put this out there. There's no scenario where Tom Brady quits playing football last year. Well, he just quits playing football, when his wife wanted him to, or whatever the story is, and that saves his marriage. Like, guys, first of all, marriages are way more complicated than that. I'm not going to get on here and talk about marriage like I'm some expert. I will just say that there's a lot involved. Number one. Number two, this idea that Tom Brady didn't get to spend enough time with his family because he's an NFL player is just complete bullshit, okay? NFL players get the most time off of any professional athletes, okay? They get 7 months off, number one. Number two, even when you're in the season, you're home the whole week. He's home all week. Yeah, no, I understand he's at the facility, during the day, like a job, like anybody else would be. And right. He's probably spending less time with his kids because he's got to deal with stuff or be at the team facility watching film or doing this with his teammates or whatever. I understand that. But this idea, and by the way, and he's not going to retire and hang around the house and take care of the kids. He's got to deal with Fox where he's either going to be calling games or in the studio. You probably have to travel for that more than you have to travel to be a player. So This idea that, oh, no, it's because he wasn't home enough is complete nonsense. People need to stop with that. It is ridiculous. Tom Brady was a football player way before him and Giselle got together anyway. It's not like this was some surprise that he's going to play. He's been a football player the entire time. This wasn't a shock to the system, and it took 13 years to flush it out. So I think, we need to give Tom Brady a break. He was, he obviously had some marital struggles. They decided to get divorced. Like, give the guy a break, okay? This isn't because he won't give his time to his family. That's just complete nonsense anyway. Besides, I think his kids are at the age where they don't want to have anything to do with their dad anyway. So I just want to nail that down. This is not, he didn't retire because he wants to spend more time with his family, okay? When professional athletes say that, it is just complete nonsense.
Yeah, because every time they say it, 6 months later, they're playing or coaching again. So,
Yeah. So I want to talk about on First Take. They've been doing kind of a Brady memorial since he announced his retirement. So they had Mike Francesa and Chris Russo. So Mike and the Mad Dog, which for some reason them getting together seems to be like some event that people can't get enough of. It's like I just find it weird. Like, now listen, I didn't grow up in New York or whatever, so I was not a Mike and the Mad Dog fan, but they're from a bygone era that we've basically, like, they're old school crappy sports radio guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they do. This is what sports radio used to be. And listen, it had its place. Okay, in the late 90s, I was listening to sports radio as much as anybody else. You know why? Because that's all we had. We didn't have the internet with all of these interesting things. We didn't have Deadspin. We didn't have, a million choices. We had guy on the radio yelling about his team. That's what we had. Yeah. And that's what Mike and the Mad Dog are. They get on and they yell about stuff and they poo-poo stuff, and they say, oh, this guy's really not that good and this guy's great and let me tell you why. And they tell you convincingly, like Mike Francesa did a couple years ago, Zion, not going to be a good player in the NBA. Don't draft him. This is the kind of nonsense that they do. So Mike Francesa, basically, they ask him about Tom Brady. He says, well, Tom Brady wasn't the best regular season quarterback. That's Peyton Manning. And he wasn't the best quarterback in the Super Bowl. That's Joe Montana. So, listen, but nobody's ever going to play for 23 years again, and nobody's ever going to get 7 Super Bowls. So, and it's just like, is this what we're going to do? We're just going to nitpick this nonsense. And this is this is where I want to bring in my theory here, is that we can't treat NBA or NFL players or especially quarterbacks like NBA stars. And that's what we're starting to do, where we're counting up the titles and all of this stuff. The quarterback is still really dependent on other players on his team way more than LeBron James is. Okay, Brady, but you have to give some credit to the Patriots for the reason that they made the Super Bowl that many times. Like, this wasn't John Elway getting the Broncos team to the Super Bowl with very little offensive talent and a good defense. That's not what happened here. We need to acknowledge the fact that, what Tom Brady did is yes, it is amazing. But you saw what happened this year when Tom Brady doesn't have the help that he needs.
Yeah.
You saw what happened. Like, Kevin Durant and LeBron, they can still get their teams to the playoffs and win playoff series even without, a great supporting cast. Look at the 2018 Cavaliers that LeBron took to the finals. Like, you're not doing that in the NFL.
Yeah,
it's not happening. And, to be more specific about his Joe Montana argument, well, Joe Montana was better in the Super Bowl. Well, yeah, because when Joe Montana went to the Super Bowl, the NFC was superior to the AFC by a lot.
They didn't win the Super Bowl for like 13 years. The AFC didn't win the Super Bowl for like 13. It was like, people who are young, they don't remember this. I mean, it literally was like to a point where like, is the AFC ever going to win the Super Bowl again? I mean, it was like they would consistently go to the Super Bowl and get their asses kicked, Right. So, yeah, that is a really important point.
The NFC Championship game used to be the Super Bowl. That's how the teams treated it. That's how they talked about it. And if you remember, a lot of those NFC Championship games were classic games.
Yeah.
Right? The 49ers beating the Cowboys, the first one, right? You had that 49ers-Redskins game was unbelievable. Like, they were bloodbaths. 49ers playing the Giants. Like, those games were ridiculous. And I guarantee you, Montana did not have 8 touchdowns and no interceptions in those games.
Yeah.
Okay? But they got to play the Broncos in the Super Bowl. They put up 55 points. They beat the Dolphins one time. They put up a whole bunch of points. Like, yeah, Montana's record was great in the Super Bowl. I'm sure it was. Because the competition wasn't even close to the same.
And by the way, he nearly threw an interception in the second Bengals Super Bowl. If you can go back and watch, he literally throws the ball and he's like, "Oh shit!" because the guy almost caught it and he didn't. He didn't catch it. Which happens. But it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like guys, the margins there are so. I mean, Montana could have potentially had a three-peat if Lawrence Taylor didn't basically knock him into next year in that NFC Championship game in 1991 or whatever it was. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like, guys, there's so many factors that go into this. You have to look at everything and kind of try to make a judgment about it. Montana couldn't really stay healthy, but he played in an era where the quarterbacks got hit really hard. Okay, they didn't advance to the point of, because Brady and Manning were like, well, we're going to learn how to fall, and we're just going to go down at certain times just to avoid getting. They didn't do that back then. You stood in there and you got, You got clocked by Lawrence Taylor.
Well, and remember, Manning and Brady entered the league when you could still do it.
Yeah.
You could still really hit the quarterbacks, and that's part of the reason. So they had to learn that early. Like, don't mess around. Like, 10 years later, it became different. It became okay for Russell Wilson and Michael Vick and all these guys to run around and make stuff happen. But that wasn't what you did when Brady and Manning got drafted. That wasn't coaches coached you not to do that. Ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think his Joe Montana argument is kind of ridiculous because the 49ers were unbelievable. They were so much better than the teams they were playing. The other thing is the Peyton Manning take about being better in the regular season. Well, yeah, because look at the offenses that Peyton Manning had built around.
Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, Edgerrin James for a while.
Dallas Clark. Like, they had great players on that offense. Brady got to do it for a couple of years with Moss. And that was basically it. And that was because Belichick was the head coach. So the team was going to be centered around defense and manage the game. Don't throw interceptions. Make sure you make the right plays in the clutch. And Brady, I think Montana and Brady's accomplishments are pretty well equal. Brady led game-winning drives to win the Super Bowl several times. He came back from 28-3. He came back from a 25-point deficit and a 10-point deficit in the Super Bowl. Like, this argument that, he's downgraded because, Montana was better in the Super Bowl and Manning was better in the regular season. Yeah, there's obvious reasons for that.
Oh, and so Rob Parker was saying, Montana had to drive down and score touchdowns to win those games. He didn't just get to kick field goal. And I'm just like, oh, dude, fucking.
Once. Montana did it one time. One time.
It was only in the second Bengals Super Bowl because he had to score. He had to come back late in the first Bengals Super Bowl. That was a field goal, or was that a touchdown?
No, the first Bengals Super Bowl they had the lead.
Oh, okay.
And the Bengals were trying to come back on them.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, no, they won that one. They were in the lead in that game most of the game, and Cincinnati tried to make a comeback. But no, Montana's, like I said, Montana's Super Bowls two of them were complete blowouts. The first one against Cincinnati, they were the better team. They won the game. It wasn't dominating, but they won the game. And then there's one where he had to bring them down at the end to win the game, to get a touchdown at the end, the famous play to John Taylor. But Brady did it over and over and over again. So yeah, it kind of I think it's funny. Like, they obviously ESPN did that to get people excited, and I understand that, but it's such a crappy, nitpicky sports radio take.
Well, then Rob Parker was on The Odd Couple, and he was saying, "Well, I wouldn't vote Brady into the Hall of Fame." It's like, dude, stop! Like, come on. Oh, I wouldn't. Well, and I guess they're going to say because of the Deflategate thing, or he's going to lump the Spygate thing in with it, and I'm just like. So you just think that all of Brady's accomplishments are cheating? Is that what you're essentially saying? And again, this gets into like the steroid thing with baseball, where I think a lot of these people that are like, oh, well, they shouldn't put him in because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, everybody was doing it. We don't know who all was doing it, so just put them all in.
Well, and the cheating thing is mostly the Patriots issue. To me, like, I get that Tom Brady was involved in Deflategate, whatever the hell that is. But this is mostly Patriots culture stuff. This doesn't have anything to do with...
Also, the Deflategate thing, so what? He wouldn't have kicked the Colts' ass that year in the AFC Championship game?
Right.
And then the next week he went out and won the Super Bowl. Wait a minute. Hold on, let me get this straight. He had 3 at that point. So the next weekend, 2 weeks after that happened, he wins the Super Bowl against Seattle. Then they win the Super Bowl against Atlanta. Then he wins the Super Bowl against the Rams. And then he goes to Tampa and wins the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. So, again, it's just hacky sports radio stuff that's just meant to piss people off. And some of it you can't really take seriously because it's just ridiculous.
Well, and listen, man, I'm not trying to advocate. I know people don't like Brady because he won a lot. I get it. I understand that.
We're
I understand
Dolphins
the way,
fans,
right?
So.
Yeah, so I'm not thrilled with, Tom Brady kicking our ass every year. That's mostly, now granted, I mostly blame the Dolphins for that. That's mostly their fault. But, I'm not, but again, I'm not going to not give Brady credit because of whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we'll move on from that. So a couple more NFL things we wanted to talk about that are going on. So Sean Payton has been hired by the Denver Broncos to be their head coach. Denver is under new ownership. from this group. I think the owners of Walmart. It's
the
them.
Walton family, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. So it's some kind of people. There's a bunch of people involved in a group that own the team, and so they bring Sean Payton in. We don't know exactly what he's making, but I guarantee he's making north of $20 million a year. Yeah. So, this has been kind of going back and forth. I find it funny, though. This is another thing, criticism of the sports media, that people had moved on. Like, if you don't, it's funny. Like, as soon as you come out in a rumor that you're interviewing for a job, if you don't take the job within a week, people move on. Everyone was like, he's going to go back to TV. I don't think he's going to coach. I think it's kind of done. It's just like, it's so funny to me. I'm going, how do you know that? Okay, you're just saying that. Okay, you don't know anything. You're just saying, oh, whatever. You just think because they haven't worked it out yet. And it's like, this is a process, man. Like, you got to interview, you got to work out, you got to decide what the structure of the organization is going to be, how it's going to work. What do you think? These are new owners. What do you think about that? What's he going to do with Russell Wilson? So it's a lot of stuff. I think it's a good hire. Sean Payton's a good football coach. The question is, as you and I have talked about, like, can he figure out an offense to get whatever's left of Russell Wilson? Can he get it out of him? Because last year, for most of the year, Russell Wilson was terrible. He was really bad. So the last few games, from what I saw, it looked like he played a little bit better when they got rid of Nathaniel Hackett. So we'll see. I think, but that's the main issue. Denver has a Super Bowl level roster.
Yeah, their defense is really good.
Yep. They allow about 14 points a game. And by the way, that defense was really good with their offense not scoring at all.
Yeah.
So
they played the Chiefs close.
Yep, both times.
So I think people are going, oh, well, that division. Well, I mean, the Raiders are kind of a mess. We'll see what Kellen Moore does with Justin Herbert. I think maybe he's better than what they had before. And the Chiefs, like, I understand the Chiefs might be about to win another Super Bowl, but it's not like the Chiefs it's not like they have a bunch of, insanely great wide receivers around Patrick Mahomes anymore. So their defense is pretty good. They're still the Chiefs, but I think, thinking that it's, way, way out of reach or something. I mean, the Chargers made the playoffs. So if you're the Broncos in that division, I mean, there are 7 playoff teams, now, so you can still make the playoffs like that. I mean, are you telling me, could I see Sean Payton getting them to 9 wins? Like, yeah, I could see that. Now I guess more than that would depend on what they get out of Russell Wilson, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think Sean Payton's a tremendous offensive coach. I think he'll figure stuff out that Russell Wilson can do and be good at. The issue is going to be, like, what kind of structure is it going to be? Because from what I keep hearing is Russell Wilson is not great at fitting into a structure. You drop back, your back foot hits, and you throw the ball. But I do think Sean Payton is going to create going to create an offense where he's going to be better at doing that, hopefully. So I think this is a really interesting team, and I think Sean Payton also looks at it. Well, if it doesn't work, I've got a big contract, and I'm going to get plenty of money for it.
Right, because they're kind of capped out. I mean, it has to work the way things, because Russell Wilson's going to be there. They're paying him a lot of money, so it's just kind of this kind of has to work out. They do need to improve their offensive line, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think they're in a tough spot. Like they got to make this work, but the team is good enough and talented enough that it should.
Right.
So it's kind of like, as a Dolphins fan, I'd love to have Denver's talent. I mean, plus all the good young players they have. Like, it's right. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting move. I think he's going to make some stuff happen there. The other NFL topic that I wanted to discuss was Aaron Rodgers. Everyone wants to float out there. I think this is just going to the way it's going to be for the rest of Aaron Rodgers' career. Is every offseason or even during the season, we're going to talk about, should he be traded, or could he go to another team, or is he going to retire? It's just this constant merry-go-round of nonsense. I'm going to, that's a good name. I'm going to call that the Aaron Rodgers merry-go-round of nonsense, because every time Aaron Rodgers says something, which, by the way, if you listen or you listen to what Aaron Rodgers says or read what Aaron Rodgers says, he's not saying anything.
Yeah, he usually
at no point is Aaron Rodgers. he's not telling us anything interesting. And every time he says something, everybody has to react to it as if he said some life-changing thing.
As if he's releasing cryptic tweets or something. You're like, well, what does this mean?
Right. He continues to say the obvious. He said Green Bay is probably having conversations that I'm not involved in. Yeah, like every team does about every single player.
Right.
Like it's unbelievable. It's one of these guys. I feel like people are trying to make us think Aaron Rodgers is interesting when he's not. He doesn't really let us into anything. He says a bunch of stuff, a lot of times to get attention.
Yeah.
Okay. And everyone falls for it. And I just don't understand I don't understand what his end game is, but whatever. He's a weird celebrity. He can do whatever he wants, but I don't understand why we have to continue to bring this up. Green Bay has not come out and given any indication that they're trading him. As a matter of fact, every action that Green Bay has taken would indicate they're keeping him. So I don't understand where this is going. Now look, football wise and roster wise, I think Green Bay should have traded him last year. Because the way that they've acted about this, it doesn't make sense. You don't keep your veteran quarterback and then make him deal with rookie receivers. You trade away your best receiver, and then he's got to deal with it. Like, this is not how you act when you feel like you're a championship level team. Right. So I don't understand what Green Bay is doing. I feel like they're just afraid of it. Like, what's going to happen if Aaron Rodgers leaves, because there's only a handful of good quarterbacks. And I understand putting up with a difficult superstar. I get that. Like, that makes complete sense to me because Aaron Rodgers is really good. But when you don't make the playoffs, it kind of begs the question, like, what is Green Bay doing front office-wise?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the main thing that I just is kind of ridiculous is, I understand that speculating about this stuff is fun. I mean, it is fun to talk about. Oh, what if he was on this team? What if he was on this team? I get that. But I just get annoyed with Green Bay's obviously going to trade him. You don't know that. No, none of you media people know that. Okay? The Jets really want him. Of course they do. Like, why wouldn't they want him as opposed to what their quarterback situation has been the last couple of years? Because they got a pretty good roster. And you put Aaron Rodgers on there, you start thinking, all right, well, we should be able to make the playoffs. So of course they want him. But then it's like, oh, well, the Dolphins should go after him. I understand that. Aaron Rodgers is obviously an upgrade over Tua. But, Aaron Rodgers makes like $60 million a year. That doesn't work with the Dolphins' cap situation with all the other talent they have, like on defense, and then they're paying Tyreek Hill and their running backs and all this other. Like, that doesn't work, And then they should trade him to Tennessee. I don't know that Tennessee is going to be that good next year. Okay, they don't have any receivers. All right, their running back, they have used him so much in the last 4 years that I got to wonder if he's kind of breaking down. I mean, even though Derrick Henry's a big guy, he's been getting hurt. So I don't understand why that's such a great, move. And the other thing is, I just don't, if he goes somewhere else, I think that'll be interesting to talk about, like I said, but I just don't really care. I think they're trying to act like we should all care because Aaron Rodgers says different stuff and whatever. I really don't care. And I'll be honest with you. Like, the players on Green Bay, I don't think they really give a shit either. They're in the offseason right now. They're doing whatever the fuck they're doing. I don't think they care. And I think when the season starts, it was like, oh, he's the quarterback? Okay. I don't, literally, I really don't think, they make this into a big deal because it is fun, but, I just, Colin Cowherd, he's trying to make it out like we all, there's so many people who are thinking Aaron Rodgers isn't an idiot sometimes and doesn't talk too much. Yeah, he talks too much. Duh. That's how he is. Like, what do you want me to say?
Yeah, when people show you who they are, believe them, right?
I know that Aaron Rodgers is like this. So what? Okay, he's on the Pat McAfee show saying stuff. Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I feel like it's not news. None of this is newsworthy, yet it continues to get coverage because he's saying it, for public consumption. I understand that, but he's not telling us anything that we don't already know.
Yeah. So look, and by the way, the other thing, San Francisco, I don't see any reason why they would be. That screws up their cap situation because they're not paying Trey Lance or Brock Purdy anything. So why would you, again, I understand wanting to have a better quarterback, but I just love how, I'm trying to think of the right analogy here, because the way people talk about this, it's kind of like it's kind of like politicians having a pie in the sky discussion about what we should do with the government and what's possible. And we're just going, well, what if money was no object and we could just do whatever the hell we want? Like the NFL. What if the salary cap didn't matter? We could just do whatever the hell we want. And it's like, well, no, you can't just do that. That's not how this works.
Yeah, we treat it like it's fantasy football, and it couldn't be farther from that. And
even in fantasy football, if you play daily fantasy, when you create a 9-man roster, there's a salary cap. You can't just go, I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers and this guy. After a point, you run out of salary, and then you got to start going bargain bin shopping. So it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So I'd be surprised if anything happens. Colin Cowherd this week on Friday was floating that he thinks Aaron Rodgers should go to Miami. That should be the spot. And it's like, yeah, okay, like sure. Would I like to have Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback? Absolutely. But I could say that too. You know what? Aaron Rodgers, the Raiders that's where it's at. That's really what's going to happen. It's like, okay. Yeah, that, and I've got some land to sell you, some oceanfront property in Kansas. Like, what do you think about that? Yeah. It's totally ridiculous. So,
but I'll be honest with you, I hope he gets traded. I think that's fun. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to happen. Like, he goes somewhere else, and like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Ryan Russillo had Mike Sando on.
Okay.
From The Athletic, and he was basically saying like he thinks Aaron Rodgers really likes being a Green Bay Packer. I mean, if you think about it, the Green Bay is they're one of those teams that they're kind of their own institution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's if you think about it, Green Bay is a small town basically. So it's kind of like he's the hero of the small town, right? If he goes to a bigger market, like he's just going to get criticized more. Like do you think, here's the thing, Aaron Rodgers lied to the media about getting vaccinated. You think that you think he gets away with that in New York City?
Yeah.
You think if he's playing for the Jets that some reporter doesn't figure out he's not vaccinated and call him on it? Like that went on for how many months? Like 2 or 3 months where he basically told them he's vaccinated and he was lying to them the whole time. Like, and they didn't figure it out because, so I think he's got a really nice gig in Green Bay. I think he likes to complain about the people in management, but I think as far as being on the team, I think he loves it.
Yeah.
I think Mike Sando is onto something there. I think there's something to it. As far as the other NFL quarterback moves, I mean, we've got Derek Carr out there, who obviously the Raiders, for some reason, the Raiders just don't want any part of anymore. They're just done with him. And then obviously we're going to have Jimmy Garoppolo out there because the 49ers have basically said there's no scenario where we're keeping him, which that's a bit rough. Well, but now he's a free agent.
Now,
so
right, exactly.
It's not like
so,
he's under contract. So it's kind of interesting. You've got some teams out there that definitely are going to be looking for quarterbacks, right? You got the Jets, you got Carolina. I put Washington on the list. I think they're going to be looking for somebody.
They should be.
I think Miami, I don't think Miami is first in line to look for a quarterback, but they're in the group. I think they're in the crowd, kind of looking around, seeing what's out there. So,
right.
Derek Carr, I have a lot of questions on. I'm confused as to why he was really good, the year before, took him to the playoffs. This year, not good with a new head coach. And having Devontae Adams, I was a little confused. I thought he played really well in the early game against Kansas City.
Yeah.
But
they had leads in some of those games, and they blew the lead, so I don't know what – is that the defense? I don't know.
Yeah, and obviously he had a falling out with Josh McDaniels because they just benched him at the end and basically sent him away from the team at the end of the season. So I don't know what the deal is, and I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
I think Derek Carr is a really interesting – I think there's a bunch of teams that he might do pretty well on. I think the Jets would be okay. I think Carolina would be okay. Obviously, I would love to have him in Miami.
Yeah.
Because I still think there's a lot of things he can do. I think Ryan Russillo was making this point, like he's kind of the guy that we hyped up too much at the beginning of his career because he got him to the playoffs and then he couldn't play in the playoff game because he was injured. And so we got a little too high on him. And then when we realized, he's not like a top end guy, we got kind of soured
Right.
on him a little bit, and now we've kind of gone too far where we act like the guy's not any good.
Right. And that's not the case. He's not elite, but he's not terrible. So yeah, it's one of those things. Again, it's the same thing with Garoppolo. Like, he's going to have to go to the right situation. So, I could see, potentially a scenario you take him to Carolina, or he goes to Carolina with Frank Reich, and they kind of they figure some stuff out, and they run it. They run a decent offense. I think he could be fine. They could potentially be, that division's really bad. They could potentially be a playoff team. And Frank Reich, like, I don't know. I don't think he's a terrible coach. I don't know if he's a great coach yet. I mean, I don't know what exactly was going on in Indianapolis the last few years. I mean, that's Jim Irsay's kind of out there. So I don't really know, but, that's a potential situation. The Jets, they've got talent there, Is Nathaniel Hackett a good offensive coordinator? I mean, maybe. I mean, I understand that, like, him as a head coach was a complete disaster, but as an offensive coordinator, he might be okay. Some of the times when they were losing, it wasn't really the play calling; it was that Russell Wilson wasn't playing well. So, I do think those moves could potentially be, because I think I agree with you. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going anywhere. Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr, those two moves could potentially be pretty interesting, where you have teams that, like, they could make the playoffs now potentially, depending on obviously a variety of things. So those two moves are interesting. Derek, like you're saying about Derek Carr, I don't know. I guess he's just on that Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins tier, maybe. So, we'll see.
Right. So in the right situation, I think he could be pretty successful. So we'll see how it goes. He's one of those guys that I kind of don't understand why. And Mike Sando was presenting it as if, he's probably not going to have that high of a market. And it's like, really?
Really? Yeah.
Like,
I mean, considering what else is out there, like,
he was saying, like, he's going to be paid like a low end starter. And I was kind of like, I don't know about that. I think he goes to the right team. Like, and the Raiders have been a mess on defense for I don't know how long, and it just seems to me like there's several reasons why it wouldn't have worked out very well, with the Raiders. But staying on the Raiders, like, that's the rumor is that Josh McDaniels is really going to be after Jimmy Garoppolo, and I guess I get it, but it's like you're going to pay like. The starting, like, people get confused about this. Like, the franchise tag for quarterbacks for this season is $32 million. So if you look at that, like, figure $32 million is your ceiling, right? If you want a starting quarterback in the NFL, that's kind of the going rate.
Right.
Like, you're going to be paying between $25 and $30 million a year. Like, that's what it is. Like, everybody's upset about, whatever. It's like, Ryan Tannehill got a $30 million a year deal 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, this idea that, so people don't realize how much it costs for a real starting quarterback once you get past the rookie contract. So I just find it interesting that they're getting rid of Derek Carr, so they're getting rid of his 3 more years of his contract so they can pay Jimmy Garoppolo a new contract. I'm
starting to think that McDaniels just is not a head coach. I'm starting to wonder because, I think he's trying to be, like we were talking yesterday, I think he's trying to be like Belichick, and it's like, dude, you haven't won jack shit. You can't be like Belichick, so.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was a disaster in Denver, right? First he had the Colts job, and then he decided not to take it for, what something was going on there. I don't know what. And McDaniels has been given all of this credit for being the offensive coordinator with maybe the greatest quarterback of all time and maybe the greatest coach of all time.
Right.
So I'm just kind of confused now. Like, you guys keep telling me he's really good. Okay. When do I see it?
Well, I mean, I just feel like him running Jay Cutler out of town. Okay, I get it. Jay Cutler, kind of an asshole. The Derek Carr thing, I don't know the guy. I don't know exactly all the stuff that was going on there, but there was something reported that, like, McDaniels was just ripping into Derek Carr in front of the team, and even people on the team were like, "What the fuck? What is this? What are you doing? Like, why is he ripping Derek Carr like this?" So, it feels to me, and we saw this with Brian Flores, where these Belichick disciples, they go into these places, and it seems like I'm going to go in here and be a hard ass, and it doesn't work. People get sick of it after a while. So, I don't know.
Yeah, they think you can just take what Bill Belichick does and apply it to another team. And I've been reading that book, Gridiron Genius by Mike Lombardi, and he talks a lot about Belichick. And Belichick is a lot more than, it's this defensive scheme and it's this offensive scheme and whatever. He does a hell of a lot more than that. And when you realize, the way he describes it, when you realize how hard Belichick works and all the stuff that Belichick does, like, this isn't stuff you can just do. Like, he figures out, exactly what a team's weakness is and exactly how they're going to take advantage of it. And it sounds simple, but Belichick's way better at it than everybody else is. And so you can't just take, this philosophy and just apply this to everything. And I agree with you. You're right about the Brian Flores thing. Yeah, he did. He improved some parts of the team, but missed the boat on a whole bunch of stuff. And I like Brian Flores, but the guy had no clue on offense.
Yeah.
None. And it looks to me like Josh McDaniels has no clue on defense.
Which that's okay, so but you got to get the right people around you dealing with that, And like I said, I mean, that, different stuff gets leaked out, and you don't know necessarily what to make of it. But I mean, it's just one of those things. It's like, dude, you can't, like, you gotta build something there, and you can't just go ripping people to shreds all the time. I mean, like, I know sometimes we like it. Like, remember when Mike Singletary was ripping, what was his name, the tight end Vernon Davis? This was like years ago. I know everybody kind of likes that, but it's like, that's not, that's one little thing. That's not building a culture and building a team. So maybe McDaniels really isn't a head coach. I guess we'll kind of see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of confusing to me. He takes the Raiders job. It's a dysfunctional franchise. The owner's kind of out there. Like, it's a weird situation. So, but I mean, as far as Jimmy G, I mean, listen, I think a lot of teams should want Jimmy Garoppolo. It's got to be the right situation. But I don't know about this Raiders thing. I think this might be a bad idea for Jimmy G. He gets out of San Francisco, and I have a feeling he might not be the same guy.
Yeah, so, I really, that's one of those things. Like Derek Carr, I think in the right situation could be okay, but I do think with Garoppolo, I'm like, well, first of all, he's probably going to get hurt, but second of all, like, if he's not on a team with a really good defense and when they can really run the ball, I'm just kind of like, all right, we'll see. We'll see. Like, I don't think that's going to necessarily end well.
Yeah. So, look, I'm, as far as Dolphins go, I'm happy that they got Vic Fangio to be the defensive coordinator. I think that's a nice hire. I think the guy, I think a guy who's been a head coach before is a really good idea. When your head coach is an offensive coach and doesn't really know much about defense. So I think that's going to work for them. I think
that's going to elevate their defense. Yeah, I think they've got enough talent on the defensive line. I mean, the secondary they need to kind of figure out, but I think he's going to be able to get them playing, at least middle of the pack. Maybe top 10. We'll see. Again, I think the secondary they got to kind of address that, but I think that's a really big deal for them. Now again, Tua's got to stay upright, and they got to be able to run the ball and all those things. But he's one of the best. I mean, if you hear people talk about it, he's one of the best defensive minds in the game right now. Like, I mean, there's like Belichick, and then maybe there's Vic Fangio, kind of a little bit behind, but it's like he's a really good defensive coordinator. So.
Yeah, and the Dolphins are still trumpeting that they're committed to Tua. We'll see how that goes. My personal opinion is I think they just really love the fact that he's still cheap. Yeah, and I don't think they want to spend the money on a real starting quarterback.
Unless something like I was holding out there that maybe they'd go get Brady, like if Stephen Ross says, but now Brady's retired, and I don't really see them going out and getting these other guys. I think that they're going to end up in May. They're going to end up picking up the 5th-year option on Tua. So, because he's under contract for this is the 4th year coming up, so I think they're going to pick the 5th-year option up. Beyond that, I don't know, because I don't know how much the health and how much he plays, how well he plays is going to factor into, if they're going to give him an extension.
And if he's able to play. He was in the concussion protocol for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I think, the health-wise, my personal opinion, I wouldn't, I don't think you can keep him long. I don't think he can be the quarterback long-term because of how he plays, let alone and then you add in the injury stuff, and it I just think it becomes untenable. But I get the feeling now that Chris Greer, the general manager, is just committed to him. He doesn't want to give up on the guy that he drafted.
Yeah. And I think he could have for Deshaun Watson or Tom Brady. Beyond that, I don't really think, because you can make it. I don't know that I would necessarily make this argument, but you could make an argument. Well, how much better is Derek Carr than him? And I'm like, all right, I guess you can sort of, if you wanted to make that argument, I guess you could kind of make that argument. So I just don't think that they're going to move off him for these other guys. And Aaron Rodgers, it's fun to talk about, Colin Cowherd, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, that would be a roster, a lot of roster moves for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I wouldn't welcome having Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I do think like Miami and San Francisco, though, I think they have to bring in. They need to have 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Like they have to solidify whatever their backup there is in case something happens, because those 2 teams have shown they're going to have injuries.
Yeah, and I swear to God, I hope it's not Teddy Bridgewater next, because he can't stay healthy either. Like, please get somebody else. Just somebody who can stay.
They're going to have to have it. They're going to have a decent backup. So, anyway, all right, that's the podcast for today. That was a lot of fun. Had a lot of stuff to talk about, and next show we should be we'll be going over the Super Bowl. And, see what happens with the Chiefs and the Eagles. And, looking forward to it. NBA trade deadline coming up. Maybe we'll have more moves to talk about there. I really thought the trade deadline would be dead, but man.
It started off with a bang, so we'll see. Got a few more days.
Yep, and we still got 4 days to go. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody have a good one.